Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight our chronicle covers the lonely, often hollow victories of those destined to save Tamriel. We're journeying into the shadows that gather just behind the throne, into the unwritten pages of history, to find out what really happens after the victory music fades and the quest markers disappear. We are looking at the tragic fates of every Elder Scrolls hero. Picture a library, vast and silent, perhaps in the arcane university, or the forgotten halls of Apocrypha itself. There is a single, immense tome bound in cracked leather, its title simply, The Saviours of Tamriel. But when you open it, the first several pages are blank. The ink has faded, or perhaps it was never written at all. This is the reward for the first. This is the fate of the eternal champion. Let's be honest, most of us would probably prefer a quiet retirement in Skingrad with a nice vineyard, but these heroes rarely get such a clean ending. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tonight, I'd love to see where you're all listening from. Post your city or country and the local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins where the legend of the Elder Scrolls itself begins, in the dungeons of the Imperial City, beneath the White Gold Tower. The year is 3E 389. The Emperor, Uriel Septim VII, rules a seemingly stable and prosperous Tamriel. But prosperity breeds arrogance, and arrogance provides a foothold for ambition. The Imperial battle mage, Jagar Tharn, a man of immense power and bottomless insecurity, sees his chance. He doesn't just want a piece of the pie, he wants the entire bakery. In a masterful stroke of magical betrayal, Tharn orchestrates his coup. He doesn't raise an army or lay a bloody siege. He uses a powerful artifact, the Staff of Chaos, to ambush the Emperor. He doesn't kill him. Death would be too simple, too easy to discover. Instead, he shunts Uriel Septim VII into a pocket dimension of Oblivion, a personal hell designed by Tharn himself, where time crawls and hope dies. With the real Emperor gone, Tharn uses his formidable illusion magic to take his place. He becomes Uriel Septim VII. The guards, the Elder Council, the servants, no one is the wiser. The Empire is now in the hands of a sociopath. But Tharn is meticulous. He knows his power has limits, and he knows that his apprentice, Rhea Silmane, is both loyal to the true Emperor and smart enough to see the cracks in his illusion. So, before she can act, he has her captured, tortured, and murdered. A loose end tied off. This is where our hero enters, or rather, this is where our hero is dragged onto the stage. They are a prisoner in the Imperial dungeons. We don't know their name, their race, or their past. They could be a disgraced noble, a petty thief, or just some poor soul who looked at a guard the wrong way. The community in the decades since has often debated who this person was. Were they a forgotten member of the Blades? A secret agent? The tragic truth, the one that sets the stage for their entire fate, is that it doesn't matter. They were a nobody. They are a nobody, but they are the only nobody available. Rhea Silmane's spirit, in the moments after her death, clings to a final thread of magic. She cannot physically interact with the world, but she can project her consciousness. She searches the city for anyone who could fight back, anyone Tharn hasn't already corrupted or killed. She finds this prisoner, trapped, helpless, and completely expendable. She appears to them in a dream. A ghostly apparition explains the entire horrifying truth. The Emperor is gone, an imposter sits the throne, and the entire Empire is a lie. This is perhaps the cruelest part. The hero is given no choice. Rhea's ghost is their only guide and frankly their only way out of the cell. She unlocks the door and gives them a single impossible task. Find the 8 scattered pieces of the Staff of Chaos. It is the very artifact Tharn used to imprison the Emperor, and it is the only thing that can break his illusion and locate the real Uriel. Tharn, being no fool, shattered it and hid the pieces in the most dangerous, forgotten and godforsaken corners of Tamriel. This is the Elder Scrolls, Arena, and the hero's quest is staggering in its scale. We aren't talking about a quick jaunt through Skyrim. The Eternal Champion, as they would eventually be known, had to cross the entire continent. They delved into the Crypt of Hearts in High Rock, faced the dangers of the Dagoth volcano in Morrowind, long before the Nerevarine ever set foot there, navigated the Black Marsh, and plundered the ruins of Hammerfell. Imagine the sheer exhaustion, the loneliness. This isn't a fellowship. There is no band of loyal companions. It is just the champion, guided by the whispering ghost of a murdered woman, fighting their way through a world that believes they are the criminal. Every city guard, every imperial soldier, every bounty hunter is loyal to Jagar-Tharn's illusion. The champion is public enemy number one. They are a terrorist, a traitor, an assassin. For 10 long years the hero fights. 10 years of living in shadows, of sleeping in ruins, of trusting no one. 10 years while Tharn, wearing the Emperor's face, systematically dismantles the Empire, sowing chaos and war for his own amusement. And then, after a decade of blood and misery, they succeed. They reassemble the Staff of Chaos. They return to the Imperial City, no longer the trembling prisoner, but a hardened, unstoppable force of nature. They fight their way through the palace, confront Jagar-Tharn in his lair, and using the staff, they destroy him. They shatter his illusion and break his hold on the real Emperor. With a flash of light, Uriel Septim, 7, is pulled back from Oblivion. He is older, weary, but alive. The Empire is saved. The hero has won. And this is where the tragedy begins. This is the fate of the champion. Uriel Septim 7 is a pragmatic ruler. He sees the hero who saved him, this person who single-handedly undid a decade of darkness. He thanks them, genuinely. He bestows upon them the title Eternal Champion, and then he tells them to leave and to never speak of this again. Think about it from the Emperor's perspective. He cannot, will not, let the world know he was tricked. He cannot let his enemies, or his own people, know that the Empire was ruled by a usurper for 10 years. The political instability would shatter the continent. The entire affair has to be buried. It never happened. Jagar-Tharn was a minor internal issue, dealt with swiftly. The wars, the deaths, the decade of decay. Unfortunate, but unrelated. The Eternal Champion is the one living person who knows the entire truth. They are the ultimate loose end. They are a walking, talking existential threat to the stability of the Septim dynasty. So, they are given their title, perhaps a heavy purse of gold, and a very firm suggestion that they disappear. The hero who saved everyone is erased from the very history they just protected. There are no statues carved in their honour. No songs sung by bards in the taverns of Solitude or Anvil. No children are named after them. They simply vanish. The greatest hero Tamriel had ever known was rewarded with total enforced obscurity. Their victory was a state secret. Their sacrifice was a political inconvenience. They walked out of the Imperial City, not to a parade, but to the quiet, indifferent streets, and were swallowed by the crowd. The Eternal Champion. The eternal part was the cruelest joke of all. They were eternally forgotten. They walked the entire continent, fought the most powerful mage of the era, and rescued the Emperor from hell itself, only to be told, "Thank you, now get lost." This is the cold, bureaucratic reality of heroism. Sometimes the greatest reward for saving the world is being allowed to live in it, quietly, while everyone else takes the credit. They walked out of the Imperial City with a heavy coin purse and a silence so profound it was its own kind of damnation. The Eternal Champion, a title that would never be uttered in a throne room again, became just a face in the crowd, a traveller, a nobody. This was the true final test, not to slay a monster, but to live with the victory. Where do you even go when you have been everywhere? The champion had seen the snows of High Rock and the swamps of Black Marsh. They had navigated the deserts of Hammerfell and the ancient forests of Valenwood. Every inn felt familiar, and every face was a stranger. For 10 years their only purpose had been the next peace, their only companion, the ghost of a murdered woman. Now Rhea Silmain was at peace, her whispers silenced. The Staff of Chaos was secure. Jagar-Tharn was dust. The quest was over. This is a hollowness that few can comprehend. The trauma of a decade-long, continent-spanning war, fought entirely alone, doesn't just fade with a good night's sleep and a thank you from the Emperor. The champion was likely plagued by nightmares, by a paranoia that would never fully recede. They would see Tharn's face in the crowd, hear his voice in the whisper of the wind. They were, in all likelihood, the single most dangerous, experienced and magically attuned mortal on the entire continent. And they had absolutely nothing to do, It's this mundane, crushing silence that defines their fate. They didn't retire. You don't retire from something no one knows you did. They simply drifted. Fan theories abound, of course. The community has long debated what became of them. Some like to believe they took their newfound wealth and bought a ship, sailing for the mysterious lands of Akavir or Piandonea to finally see something new. Others suggest they settled down under an assumed name, perhaps becoming the quiet, unsettlingly skilled swordmaster of a tiny village, the one the kids whisper about but never approach. But the most tragic, and perhaps the most realistic theory, is that they simply tried to live a normal life and failed. How can you haggle for the price of tomatoes when you've bartered with a Daedric prince for a piece of a divine artifact? How can you tolerate the complaints of a local guardsman about arrow-in-the-knee jokes, or their equivalent at the time, when you've personally cut down hundreds of Tharn's elite guard? Every aspect of mortal life would seem petty, shallow, a dull, grey painting after a decade of staring into a kaleidoscope of chaos and magic. This hero was forced to navigate the sheer, overwhelming scale of Tamriel, a world so vast in arena that its wilderness was an endless, procedurally generated expanse of nothing. They spent 10 years in that nothing, and now they were relegated to it permanently. So let's imagine them, a man or woman, their race unimportant, sitting in a tavern in, say, the Iliac Bay, somewhere near Daggerfall. They are quiet, drink, alone, and their eyes have a disconcerting stillness. They listen to the local merchants complaining about pirates, about the squabbles between the kingdoms of Sentinel and Daggerfall. The champion knows with absolute certainty that they could solve these problems in a week, that they could march into the pirates' den, kill their leader, and be back before breakfast. But they don't, because that's not their job anymore. Uriel Septim VII's message was clear. Your part is over. To act would be to draw attention. To draw attention would be to risk the truth being revealed. And to reveal the truth would be to defy the Emperor they had just saved. They were trapped in their own freedom, a prisoner of their own success. Their eternal champion title was a gilded cage, a polite way of saying you are eternally bound to this secret. And so, the years ticked by. The champion would have aged, the 10 years of the quest and the years that followed. They would have watched as the Empire healed. They would have heard the official story, the sanitized version of Tharn's brief rebellion. They would have gritted their teeth and said nothing. They might have even heard bards sing songs of Uriel Septim VII's wisdom in rooting out the internal strife. Their victory was credited to the very man who had them exiled. This is the obscure, bitter truth of the political machine the Empire needed to forget. In the years that followed, other stranger events began to capture the public's attention. Just a few years later, in 3E417, the entire Iliac Bay region would be shattered by a temporal paradox known as the Warp in the West. An event so bizarre, so reality-bending, that it completely overshadowed the quiet, secret war of Jagarthan. History, it seems, has a short memory for heroes, but a long one for bizarre magical catastrophes. And what of the champion during this warp? We don't know. Perhaps they were there. Perhaps they were one of the thousands who were simply erased when time broke. But it's more likely they were far away, watching from a distance, perhaps with a grim, knowing smile. Amateurs, they might have muttered, as 6 different kingdoms all claimed victory at the same time. The most pressing fan debate isn't just where they went, but why they were never called upon again. Uriel Septim VII was no fool. He knew exactly what the champion was capable of. Decades later, when the Oblivion crisis began, when the sky tore open and Daedra poured out, when the Emperor's own sons were assassinated, why did he not send for the one person in all of Tamriel who had already defeated a full-scale Daedric-backed plot? The answer is the most mundane and tragic of all. By the time the Oblivion crisis began in 3E433, it had been 34 years since the champion had defeated Tharn. The hero was likely long dead. They didn't die in a blaze of glory. They weren't felled by a dragon or a lich. The eternal champion, the saviour of the Empire, likely died of a fever in a rented room, or a quiet knife in a dark alley over the heavy coin purse they still carried. Or, perhaps most fittingly, simply of old age, in a small, unremarkable house, their legendary armour rusting in a chest under the bed. They died a mortal's death, unknown and unmourned by the Empire they had bled for. Their throne, the figurative seat of honour at the Emperor's side sat empty. It was never offered. It was never claimed. Their story is a ghost story, a warning about what saving the world truly means. It means the world moves on, and you don't. You are the artifact that is put back in its box, locked away in an attic, because you are too powerful and too inconvenient to be left on display. The Empire, however, had learned a valuable lesson. It learned that having a single, all-powerful hero was messy, inconvenient. What it needed wasn't a hero. It needed a tool, an asset, someone expendable who could be pointed at a problem and then, when the problem was solved, could be easily disposed of. And in the political hornet's nest of the Iliac Bay, it would find the perfect candidate. The Empire, having learned the wrong lesson from the Jagathan affair, no longer wanted a hero. A hero is messy, inconvenient, and has their own moral compass. No, the Empire needed a tool, a scalpel, someone deniable, expendable, and above all loyal. And in the festering political wound of the Iliac Bay, Uriel Septim VII saw the perfect place to deploy his new asset. This is where our second hero, the Agent, enters the story, and their fate is, in many ways, far more tragic than the Champion's. The Champion was a random prisoner given a mythic task. The Agent was a professional, a loyal servant, a member of the Blades. Some accounts, pieced together from fragmented in-game letters, suggest they were even a personal friend of the Emperor. The Champion was told to save the Emperor and was rewarded with obscurity. The Agent was told to serve the Emperor and was rewarded with a betrayal so complete it literally broke time. The political situation in 3405 was a nightmare. The kingdoms of the Iliac Bay, primarily Daggerfall, Sentinel and Wayrest, were at each other's throats, locked in a web of petty grievances, border disputes and ancient hatreds. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark, and Uriel Septim VII, the very Emperor the Eternal Champion had saved, decided to send his personal agent right into the middle of it. The agent's official mission was twofold. First, a simple ghost story. King Lysandus of Daggerfall, recently killed in battle, was now haunting his own castle, his spirit screaming for vengeance. This was, understandably, bad for morale and politically destabilising. The agent was to go to Daggerfall and put the spirit to rest. Second, a bit of imperial housekeeping. A private letter from the Emperor to the Queen of Daggerfall had gone missing. The agent was to discreetly recover it. A ghost hunt and a lost piece of mail. It sounds like a low-stakes assignment. But this is Tamriel. Low stakes is just another way of saying, you don't know the whole story. The agent, unlike the Wandering Champion, was immediately swallowed by the complexity of civilization. This wasn't a lonely trek across a vast wilderness. This was a deep dive into a shark tank. Daggerfall is infamous among lawmasters for its staggering, almost absurd number of factions. The agent had to navigate the Mages Guild, the Fighters Guild, the Warring Temples of the Divines, the Dark Brotherhood, various knightly orders, vampire clans, witches' covens, and the royal courts of dozens of minor nobles. This is a core fact of the agent's life. Their existence was a constant balancing act. Earning favour with one faction meant earning the enmity of another. Every quest, every conversation was a political calculation. They weren't just a warrior. They were a spy, a diplomat, a backstabber, and a pawn. And as they dug deeper into the simple ghost story, they uncovered the truth. King Lysandus wasn't just killed in battle. He was assassinated by an agent of Wayrest, with the quiet compliance of his own court. The missing letter wasn't a simple note. It was a blackmail piece, a dark secret about the Queen of Daggerfall. But even these revelations paled in comparison to the real prize. The agent's investigation led them to the true source of all the conflict, the object every faction was secretly manoeuvring to find, the Totem of Tiber Septim. This is where the agent's fate was sealed. The totem was the key to activating the Numidium, the colossal Dwemer automaton, the brass god that Tiber Septim himself had used to conquer Tamriel and forge the Third Empire. The Numidium was a weapon of mass destruction, a no button for reality. And the agent, this loyal imperial spy, had just found the trigger. Suddenly the agent wasn't an employee anymore. They were a liability. They were the single most powerful individual on the continent, not because of their own strength, but because of the object in their pocket. Every power in the Iliac Bay wanted it. The King of Daggerfall, the King of Sentinel, the King of Wayrest, the emerging Orc Kingdom of Orsinium. They all saw the Numidium as their path to total victory. And then there was the Underking. This is the obscure, tragic lore at the heart of Daggerfall. The Underking, Zurin Arctus, was the original Imperial battle mage for Tiber Septim. He was the one who created the artifact that powered the Numidium in the first place, and in the process his soul was torn from his body and trapped in the artifact, while his body became a decaying immortal lich. He too wanted the totem not to conquer Tamriel but to finally die. The agent was trapped, holding a reality-breaking weapon, pursued by no less than 7 major political and supernatural powers. And what of their boss, their friend, Uriel Septim VII? He sent the Blades, the agent's own colleagues, to retrieve the totem. The mission was never about a ghost or a letter. Those were lies, a breadcrumb trail to lead his disposable tool to the WMD. The Emperor had played them from the start. This is the cold, bureaucratic heart of the agent's tragedy. They weren't a chosen one, they were an asset, and when that asset became too hot to handle, they were reclassified as a target. The fan community has long highlighted this grim narrative. Daggerfall is not a power fantasy in the same way Skyrim is. It's a political thriller where you are the MacGuffin, and everyone is trying to kill you for it. The agent, cornered and betrayed by everyone, including their own emperor, was left with an impossible choice. Who do they give the totem to? The game famously has 6 possible endings, plus a few failure states. The agent could give it to any of the kings, to the Underking, or even to the Orcs. They were no longer a person. They were a fulcrum, a single point of decision upon which the entire future of the Iliac Bay rested. And when that much political and magical pressure is applied to a single, mortal point, that point must inevitably shatter. The agent made their choice, or perhaps they tried to make all the choices. And in that moment, reality itself buckled, turning one loyal spy into the epicenter of a temporal explosion that would rewrite history forever. The agent stood at the nexus, a single mortal life becoming the anchor point for the warring ambitions of kings, gods, and the undead. They held the totem, the key to the brass god, and every power in the Iliac Bay lunged for it at the exact same moment. The pressure, both political and mystical, was too much. The fabric of reality, already thin in the Elder Scrolls, did not just tear, it shattered. This event is known to scholars as a dragon break. It's a phenomenon unique to Tamriel, a land where time itself is not a stable, flowing river, but a capricious, divine construct. Akatosh, the dragon god of time, is its overseer, but a dragon break is exactly what it sounds like. The dragon breaks. Linear time ceases to exist. The if-then causality that mortals rely on is suspended, and for a period all possibilities occur at once. It is a metaphysical reset button, a failsafe for the gods to correct a timeline that has become too corrupted, or in this case, a catastrophic side effect of mortals meddling with divine power. This specific dragon break is known as the Warp in the West. From the 6th to the 8th of Frostfall, 3E417, the Iliac Bay ceased to make sense. In that 48-hour period of temporal chaos, all 6 of the agent's potential choices happened. The King of Daggerfall received the totem, activated the Numidium, and utterly crushed the Kingdom of Sentinel. Simultaneously, the King of Sentinel received the totem, activated the Numidium, and utterly crushed the Kingdom of Daggerfall. Wayrest, led by its cunning king, somehow also gained control of the Brass God and used it to annihilate its rivals, forging a new, powerful kingdom. The Orcs of Orsinium, in this same window, used the Numidium to carve out their own territory, fighting the other kingdoms to a standstill and forcing the Empire to finally recognise them as a legitimate independent kingdom. And in the midst of this all, the Underking, Zurin Arctus, also got the totem. He seized the Numidium, drawing its chaotic power into himself, and in a final, agonising blast of soul energy, he destroyed the automaton and at long last allowed himself to die. Even the Emperor's own blades, his final failsafe, were said to have secured the totem, only to see it and the Numidium destroyed. When the dust settled on the 9th of Frostfall, the dragon reformed. Time snapped back into place, like a bone setting incorrectly. The inhabitants of the Iliac Bay awoke to a new, terrifying reality. Where there had been dozens of squabbling petty kingdoms, There were now only 3, Daggerfall, Sentinel and Wayrest, and the newly formed Orsinium. The political map had been violently, miraculously redrawn in a single night. This is the core in-game fact, documented in the aptly named book The Warp in the West. This text is the Empire's official, bewildered attempt to explain the unexplainable. It's filled with contradictory reports, accounts of armies appearing from nowhere, of kings being in 2 places at once, and of a strange localized fog of war that blinded all scrying magic. It concludes with a very imperial shrug that it was a miracle of the divines. But it was no miracle, it was an explosion, and the agent was at ground zero. This is their tragic fate. What happens to a person who is pulled in 6 different directions by reality itself? The fan community has long debated the specifics, but the conclusion is always the same: annihilation. The agent didn't just die, they were erased. They were a temporal paradox, a variable in an equation that had just been solved 6 different ways. To make the new reality stable, the variable had to be cancelled out. The Eternal Champion was forgotten. The agent was unhappened. There is no grave. There are no records. No one in the new, streamlined Iliac Bay remembers the spy who came and set the world on fire. The kings who won their new territories remember their victory, and their version of events is the one that became truth. The agent, existing in all timelines, was now in none of them. They were torn apart, their souls scattered, a footnote in a divine event that mortals could never comprehend. The sheer, cold-blooded cynicism of the Empire is staggering. Uriel Septim VII got exactly what he wanted. The chaotic, rebellious Iliac Bay was pacified, consolidated into a few manageable kingdoms. The Numidium, the greatest threat to imperial stability, was gone, and the tool he had used, the loyal blade, the friend he sent to do his dirty work, was vaporized, a perfect deniable asset. The agent's reward for their loyalty was to be retroactively deleted from existence. They were sacrificed not for a great good, but for political tidiness. This impersonal, grinding nature of fate, this sense of being a pawn for forces far older and more cruel than any mortal, would become the defining theme for the next hero. The Empire, however, still hadn't learned its lesson. It continued to use prisoners as disposable agents, mail carriers for destiny. And its next delivery would be to a place that specialised in breaking heroes, the grey, ashen, alien land of Morrowind. From the temporal wreckage of the Iliac Bay, the Imperial machine grinds on. Uriel Septim VII, now an ageing, pragmatic and perhaps ruthless emperor, turns his gaze to the most troublesome, xenophobic and alien province in his empire, Morrowind. And once again, he finds his hero in the darkness of a prison. This is where our third hero enters, not with a ghostly guide or a political writ, but with the rattle of chains and the smell of salt water. The story begins with the words, "Wake up, we're here." The hero is a prisoner, their past a complete blank, shipped to the remote swampy village of Seyden Neen. This is a core in-game fact, the quintessential Elder Scrolls beginning. But this time, the Emperor's plan is far more subtle and far more insidious. The prisoner is given a package, a pittance of gold, and a single order: report to Caius Cosades in the city of Balmora. Cosades, they soon discover, is the Imperial spymaster for Morrowind. The hero hasn't just been released, they've been conscripted. They are once again a deniable asset, an Imperial agent. But this time, the Emperor isn't just trying to recover an artifact, he's playing with a prophecy. Morrowind is not like the rest of Tamriel. It is a land of giant mushrooms, insects the size of horses, and a deeply insular, hostile culture. The Dunmer, the Dark Elves, despise Noirs, or Outlanders, and they are ruled not by a king, but by a triumvirate of living, breathing gods, Almalexia, Sorthasil, and Vivek. The Tribunal. This divine triumvirate is the foundation of all life in Morrowind, but there is a shadow in their past, a heresy whispered only by the nomadic Ashlanders in the wastes. They speak of the Nerevarine prophecy. It claims that millennia ago the great Dunmer hero, Indoril Nerevar, was betrayed and murdered at Red Mountain by his closest friends, who then used a powerful artifact, the Heart of Lorcan, to steal their divinity and become the Tribunal. The prophecy states that Nerevar will one day be reincarnated, as an Outlander no less, to return to Morrowind, cast down the false gods, and heal the land of a terrible blight. This is why the hero was sent here. The Emperor, in his endless cunning game, suspects this prisoner might be the one. He is intentionally, cynically throwing a potential messiah into a theocracy that kills heretics, all just to see if it destabilizes their power. This is the Nerevarines' fate, to be a pawn for two of the most powerful forces in existence. For the Emperor, they are a political tool. For the Daedric Prince Azura, the author of the prophecy, they are an instrument of divine vengeance. And so, the hero is caught. They are hated, feared, and revered all at once. They are hated by the Tribunal Temple, the single most powerful institution in the province. To the Ordinators, the militant arm of the temple, the hero is a blasphemer, a terrorist. The mere suggestion that they are the Nerevarine is a death sentence. They are hunted, their allies are murdered, and every official citizen is encouraged to treat them with contempt. They are feared by the great houses, the political rulers of Morrowind. They see a potential civil war, a religious schism that could tear their society apart. They fear the Nerevarine as an imperial puppet sent to destroy their way of life. They fear them as a genuine religious figure who will do the exact same thing. And, slowly, painstakingly, they are revered. The Ashlanders, the outcasts who have kept the true faith alive, see the hero fulfilling the signs. The common people, suffering under the soul-twisting magical disease known as the Blight, begin to see this stranger as their only hope. This is the central conflict of the Nerevarines' life. They are trying to save a people who, for the most part, are trying to kill them. As the hero digs deeper, they uncover the truth. The Blight is real. It's pouring from Red Mountain, the domain of the devil of Dunmer legend, Dagoth-Ur. He is the reawakened, insane, and terrifyingly powerful brother of the Tribunal, a figure from that same ancient battle who has also been tapping into the heart of Lorcan. He believes he is the true god, and he is building an army of corporous monsters to liberate Morrowind. This brings us to the great fan debate. Is the Nerevarine really the reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar? Or are they just a random prisoner, a blank slate, that Azura forced into the role? Is it a true rebirth, or a mantling, where a person performs the deeds of a legend so perfectly that they become them? The game never gives a clear answer, leaving the hero's very identity a mystery. Are they a destined hero, or just the most tragically convenient person in Tamriel? To defeat Dagoth-Ur, the Nerevarine must do the unthinkable. They must find the truth. They seek out the dissident priests, a hidden sect within the temple who have discovered the same heresy. This leads them to the obscure lore tidbit, the Apocrypha, the hidden, forbidden gospels that detail the Tribunal's betrayal. The hero learns the truth. Their gods are murderers. Armed with this knowledge, and the lost artifacts of Nerevar himself, the hero walks into the heart of darkness. They confront Dagoth-Ur. They fight their way to the heart of Lorcan, the divine battery that powers all of them, Dagoth-Ur and the Tribunal. And in their final, victorious act, the Nerevarine uses the tools of the Dwemer Smith Kagranak to shatter the enchantments on the heart, severing its connection to the mortal world forever. Dagoth-Ur is destroyed. The Blight is stopped. Morrowind is saved. But this victory is the most profound tragedy of all. In killing the devil, the Nerevarine has also killed the gods. The Tribunal's power is cut off. They are mortal once more, left to face a confused, angry, and now godless nation. The hero has saved the body of Morrowind but shattered its soul. They emerge from Red Mountain, the saviour, and the pariah. They are the living proof that their entire religion was a lie. They are a hero, but they are a hero with no home. And as they would soon discover, their victory had come with a terrible, permanent, and very personal price. They stood in the heart of the volcano, the divine hum of the heart of Lorcan finally silenced. Dagoth-Ur was gone, his body scattered, his dream of a monstrous unified Morrowind returned to dust. The Nerevarine had won. They had saved the Dunmer people from the Blight, exposed the lies of the Tribunal, and fulfilled a prophecy thousands of years old. And in doing so, they had become the most isolated and perhaps the most dangerous person on the continent. But there was a price for this victory, a personal toll extracted long before the final battle. To even reach Dagoth-Ur, the Nerevarine had to walk a path that no mortal could survive. They had to contract the Blight, the very disease they were sent to destroy. They had to be infected with Corpus. This is the core in-game fact of the Nerevarines' journey. Corpus was not a simple sickness. It was a divine disease, a magical cancerous affliction that originated from the heart of Lorcan itself. It twisted the body into a bloated, tumorous mass of flesh, but it did not kill. Instead, it destroyed the mind, turning its victims into savage, howling monsters, and it made them immortal. It was a cancerous, unending, mindless life. The Nerevarine infected was in a race against time before their mind shattered. They were sent to the only expert on the disease, an ancient, eccentric, and fantastically powerful Telvanni wizard named Devaith Fear. Fear was over 4,000 years old, a contemporary of the tribunal themselves, and he ran a corpusarium, a dungeon beneath his tower where he cared for the afflicted, which mostly meant letting them wander around, including his own daughter so he could study them. A real heartwarming family man. Fear, intrigued by this hero who had willingly contracted the divine disease, offered a trade, an experiment. He had developed a cure, a potion he believed might work, but he hadn't had a stable, sane test subject. The Nerevarine, with no other options, drank the potion, and it worked. Sort of. The madness receded, the tumours shrank, the physical agony stopped. But Devaith Fear, in his own notes, admits the truth. It wasn't a cure, it was a modification. The potion had suppressed the negative effects of Corpus, the decay, the insanity, the monstrous transformation, but it had kept the positive ones. The Nerevarine was now immune to all other diseases. Their attributes were enhanced, and most importantly, they were now immortal. They would no longer age. This is the Nerevarines' tragic fate, the quiet curse hidden inside the victory. They had destroyed the false gods of Morrowind, only to become a demigod themselves. They had fought to end Dagothur's unnatural plague, only to become its sole, perfected survivor. What do you do after you kill God? The world doesn't just stop. The Nerevarine emerged from Red Mountain to a world in chaos. The Ministry of Truth, that giant rock floating over Vivec City, was no longer held aloft by Vivec's waning power. The Ordinators and Temple hardliners still wanted the heretic Nerevarine dead. The great houses were in a panic, their entire social and religious structure collapsing. The hero had no one. Their mentor, Caius Kozades, had been conveniently recalled to Cyrodiil by the Emperor before the final battle, a loose end being neatly tied up by the Imperial Spy Service. The Emperor himself, Uriel Septim VII, would soon be assassinated, sparking the Oblivion crisis. The Nerevarine was, once again, alone. The world they had saved now had no place for them. They were a living, walking reminder of the most painful truth in Dunmer history. They were revered by the Ashlanders, yes, but they were still a Noir, an outlander. They could never truly be one of them. And so the immortal hero began to clean up the mess. This led them to Mournhold, the capital, in pursuit of Dark Brotherhood assassins sent to kill them. There, they found Almalexia, one of the three living gods, driven to absolute madness by the loss of her divinity. In her paranoia, she had already murdered the third god, the clockwork mage Sotha Sil, and was now planning to kill the Nerevarine and declare herself the one true god. The hero was forced to fight and kill her, this once revered figure, in the ruins of her own city. One more god struck down. Then they were called to the frozen island of Solstheim. There they were drawn into a primal ritual, the hunt of the Daedric Prince Hircine. This is the obscure lore tidbit that many overlook. The Blood Moon expansion solidifies the Nerevarines' new status. They are no longer a mortal hero. They are a player in the games of the Daedra, a peer. They fight a physical aspect of Hircine himself and win, becoming the new hunter. This is the great fan theory that defines the Nerevarines' end. They simply could not stay in Tamriel. They were an immortal, ageless figure in a world that was moving on. They would have to watch every friend they had made, every ally in the Ashlander tribes, every guildmate, grow old, wither, and die. They would attend their funerals and then the funerals of their children. They were a fixed point in a turning world. This loneliness is the true curse of Corpus. The eternal champion was forgotten by history. The agent was erased by time. The Nerevarine was condemned to watch all of history pass them by, a living relic of a bygone age. They were an outlander when they arrived, and after saving the entire nation, They were an outlander still. They had fulfilled the prophecy. They had cleaned up the mess of the tribunal. They had even become a champion of a Daedric prince. Their purpose in Tamriel was over, and so, this ageless hero, this god-killer, this pariah, did the only thing left to do. They bought a ship, looked east, and sailed away from the continent of Tamriel forever. So the Nerevarine stood, an immortal god-killer, in a land whose gods they had killed. They had become the single most powerful and revered and hated figure in all of Morrowind. They had watched Almalexia, a being of supposed divine wisdom, descend into a pathetic, murderous madness. They had seen the last of the tribunal, the poet-warrior Vivek, simply vanish. His purpose fulfilled, his power gone, leaving his people to fend for themselves. The Nerevarine was the last one standing, and they were utterly, profoundly alone. This is the curse of Corpus, the true price of their victory. They were ageless. They would watch the ruins of Mournhold be rebuilt. They would watch the Dunmer people slowly, painfully forge a new, godless society from the ashes of the old. They would watch every friend, every ally, every Ashlander who had ever called them incarnate, grow frail, grey, and die. They were a living monument to a truth everyone wanted to forget. This agelessness is the great fan debate. What does an immortal hero do when the war is over? Some argue they could have ruled. They had the power, the artifacts, the name. They could have forged a new empire, but that was never their way. That was the way of Daggerfall of the Tribunal. The Nerevarine was an instrument, a tool, and when the job was done, the tool was put down. But the tool couldn't rust. It couldn't break. It just was. This is why they left. It wasn't a glorious search for new adventure. It was, in all likelihood, an escape, an exile. It was the only merciful act left to them, for themselves and for Morrowind. To stay would be to poison their own victory, to become a new god, a new tyrant, or just a very, very sad relic. And so, they went to the docks. They looked east, past the islands, past the mists, to the one place on Nirn that was as alien and unknown as they now were. They looked to Akavir. This is the core in-game fact of the Neravarine's final chapter. In the years that followed, as documented by travellers and even mentioned by the lore master Mike the Liar, the Nerevarine was gone. The Nerevarine? He sailed east, they'll tell you. He took a ship and pointed it at the vast empty ocean, and was never seen in Tamriel again. This was not a pleasure cruise. Akavir is not some gentle, undiscovered country. It is the Dragon Land. It is a continent of pure distilled nightmare, a place that makes Morrowind look like a sensible, well-adjusted retirement community. The lore we have of Akavir is fragmented, terrifying, and mostly comes from the reports of failed invasions. It is a land of 4 major powers, all of them monstrous. There are the Tang Mo, the Monkey People, the Capo Tune, the Tiger Folk whose leader, the Tiger Dragon, is a being of immense power. There are the Kamal, snow demons who once invaded Tamriel and were repelled at Morrowind, funnily enough. And then there are the Saishi, the Serpent Men. This is the obscure lore tidbit, pulled from the in-game text, Mysterious Akavir. The Saishi are not just snake people. They are described as immortal, vampiric, and chillingly beautiful. They are a land of immortal serpents who have eaten all the men of Akavir. This line is debated. Did they literally eat the human populations, or did they absorb them, interbreed, or eat their culture? We don't know, but we know this. They are the ones who created the blades. The Akaviri Dragon Guard, who became Tiber Septim's personal guard, were Saishi. They are a race of perfect, immortal, soul-stealing warriors. This is where the Nerevarine, the immortal hero, sailed. Why? The fan theories splinter here. Did they go seeking a challenge? As a god-killer, were the monsters of Akavir the only opponents left who mattered? Did they go to hunt the dragons that had fled there, fulfilling their role as a hunter given to them by Hircine? Or perhaps, the most tragic theory, did they go to Akavir to find a cure? Not a cure for a disease, but a cure for their condition. Did the Nerevarine go to the land of immortal serpent men to learn how to finally die? This is the heart of their tragedy. They are the only hero on our list who isn't defined by their death, but by their inability to die. They are a being of immense power, trapped in an ageless body, sailing into a land of monsters, hoping, perhaps, to find something strong enough to finally end them, or, failing that, to find something so horrible that it would at least make them feel alive again. Their journey is a one-way trip into the unknown. They left Tamriel, they left the story, they simply sailed away, and their timing could not have been worse. Because just a few short years after the Nerevarine disappeared over the eastern horizon, the Septim dynasty, the very engine of all this heroism, finally collapsed. Uriel Septim VII, the old cunning emperor who had played chess with all their lives, who had used the champion, the agent, and the Nerevarine as his personal disposable pawns, was about to be checkmated. Back in Cyrodiil, in the heart of the Empire, the sky was about to tear open. The Nerevarine was gone. The greatest hero of the age was on the other side of the world, unavailable. And as the assassin's blades closed in on the Emperor, as the gates of Oblivion began to glow, Uriel Septim VII had one last, desperate card to play. He turned, as he always did, to the nearest prison cell. The year is 433. The Imperial City. A prisoner, their race and past a complete unknown, sits in a dark, damp cell. They are here for reasons unknown, maybe petty theft, maybe murder, maybe just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like the eternal champion before them, they are a nobody. But they are a nobody in the right cell, at the right moment. The door doesn't just open, it explodes inward. In walks Emperor Uriel Septim VII himself, flanked by his personal guard, the Blades. The Emperor is old now, his face a mask of grim terror. He stops, looks at the prisoner, and utters the words that will seal this new hero's fate. "You, I have seen you in my dreams." Before the prisoner can even process this, the walls are breached. Assassins in sinister red and black armour, the mythic dawn, pour into the room. This isn't a royal pardon, it's a desperate escape. The prisoner is not being freed, they are simply being dragged along because the Emperor's escape route, a secret passage, happens to be hidden in their very cell. This is the chaotic, unceremonious, and frankly rude beginning of our fourth hero. They are given no choice. They are handed a torch, a sword, and are told to follow. They are a meat shield, an accidental tourist at the assassination of the most powerful man in the world. They are forced to witness it all. They watch as the Blades, the elite of the elite, are cut down one by one in the dark, cramped sewer tunnels. They listen as Uriel Septim, the grand puppet master of the last three heroes, the man who sacrificed the agent and exiled the Nerevarine, meets a pathetic, shivved-in-a-tunnel end. But before he dies, he turns to this random prisoner, this person he has known for all of 10 minutes. He presses a priceless divine artifact into their hand, the Amulet of Kings. He gives them their homework, a dying man's last impossible command. Find my son, find Martin, close shut the jaws of Oblivion. And then he dies. The Emperor is gone. The prisoner is left in the dark, holding the single most important item on the continent, with the blood of the Empire on their hands. This is the core in-game fact that defines this hero's entire existence. Their quest isn't born of prophecy or political maneuvering. It's a burden, a deathbed promise made to a stranger. They emerge from the sewers, blinking, into a world that has already ended. Outside the city, the sky is torn. A massive flaming gateway, an Oblivion gate, has ripped open in the sky. Daedra are pouring out. This isn't a secret war like Tharn's. This isn't a political mess like Daggerfall's. This is the full-throated, screaming, fire and brimstone apocalypse. The hero follows the Emperor's last command. They find Joffrey, the Grandmaster of the Blades, hiding as a monk at Waynon Priory. Joffrey, upon seeing the amulet, tells them the impossible truth. The Emperor had an illegitimate son, priest, named Martin, and he is in Kvatch. So the hero, still reeling, makes their way to the city of Kvatch, and this is where their old life, their prison self, is burned away forever, and their new terrible identity is forged. They don't arrive at Kvatch, they arrive at a massacre. This is the destruction of a whole city from our outline. The hero crests a hill to see Kvatch not just under attack, but gone. It is a smoking, burning ruin, encircled by a colossal, pulsating Oblivion gate, the first of its kind. The sky is blood red. The ground is littered with the bodies of guards and civilians. A few survivors huddle in a makeshift camp, their faces blank with shock. They tell the hero the story. The sky broke, the monsters came, the city fell in minutes. This is what it means to be forced to witness. The hero is too late. They haven't failed the mission, not yet, but they have failed the city. To find Martin, who is trapped in the city's chapel, they must do something. The guards are broken, terrified. They look at this stranger, and the hero, this random prisoner, realizes the truth. No one else is coming. They have to go in, not just into the city, but into the gate, into Oblivion itself. They step through the portal and into the Deadlands, the realm of Mehrunes Dagon. It is a hellscape of lava, jagged rock, and towers made of flayed skin and screaming metal. This isn't a dungeon. It's a different dimension of pure, weaponized suffering. They fight their way through the Daedra, the Scamps and the Clanfear, and the terrifying, arrogant Dremora. They climb the Sigil Tower, grab the pulsating Sigil Stone at its peak, and the gate collapses, pulling them back to reality. They emerge, covered in ash and Daedric blood, to a traumatized silence. The gate is gone. They fight their way through the ruined streets, cut down the remaining monsters, and find Martin Septim, a terrified, bewildered priest hiding with a few survivors. This is the hero's baptism. They get their title, the Hero of Kvatch. It is not a title of glory, it is a title of trauma. It means the one who walked into hell and came back. The one who was there. This entire sequence raises the great fan debate. Who is this hero? Why them? Why did the Emperor dream of this specific prisoner? The most popular and enduring theory is that the Hero of Kvatch is a Shezarene, a mortal incarnation of the missing creator god, Lorcan, also called Shazar. Lorcan's heart, remember, was the very thing that Nerevarine destroyed. A Shezarene is a piece of that divine spark, a Lorcan-shaped soul born in a mortal body. Pelinal Whitestrake, the ancient half-mad demigod who also fought Daedra, was the most famous Shezarene. This theory posits that only a divine soul, a Shezarene, could have been in that cell, could have been recognized by the divine blood of the Emperor, and could have survived the trip to the Deadlands. This adds another layer of tragedy. The hero isn't just a random person. They are a fragment of a dead god, railroaded by destiny, forced to clean up the mess of other gods. And what of the amulet? This is the obscure lore tidbit. The Amulet of Kings, the Chimel Adabal, is not just a key. It is a receptacle. It is a divine soul gem that contains the souls and memories of every sainted emperor of the Septim and Alessian dynasties. The Hero of Kvatch is walking around with a chorus of dead god kings whispering in their ear, a constant psychic pressure to fulfill the quest. This Hero of Kvatch, this Shezarene, carrying a necklace full of dead kings, has just witnessed the total annihilation of a city. This kind of trauma changes a person. It hardens them. But it also, perhaps, breaks something. They have their quest. Protect Martin, restore the amulet, relight the dragon fires, and stop Dagon. But this hero, this blank slate, is so much more. They are a force of nature. They don't just stop at Kvatch. They go on to become the Archmage of the Mages Guild. They become the Grey Fox, the Master of the Thieves Guild. They become the Listener, the leader of the Dark Brotherhood. They are everything. They are a being of perfect, unstoppable competence, a mortal who has walked in Oblivion and returned. And this makes them interesting. Not just to Martin or the Blades, it makes them interesting to other Daedric princes. This hero, who is defined by their fight against Mehrunes Dagon, is about to receive an invitation. A strange door has appeared in the Nibene Bay, a door that shimmers with an unnatural light, whispering of a place of joy and madness. Sheogorath, the Prince of Madness, has taken notice, and he has a job offer. The Hero of Kvatch, having walked out of the smoking ruin of a city, was no longer a random prisoner. They were a symbol. They had done the impossible. They had walked into hell, punched the devil's time clock, and walked back out. And now, the entire fate of Tamriel rested on their shoulders. Their life became a grim, repetitive, and brutal routine. Martin Septim, the priest-turned-emperor-in-waiting, was safe for the moment, hunkered down in the Blades' fortress of Cloudruler Temple, surrounded by the greatest warriors in the land. His job was to study. The hero's job was to bleed. This is when they truly became the champion of Cyrodiil. The title was earned not in a single, glorious battle, but in 1,000 grinding skirmishes. Every time a new Oblivion gate tore open, outside Bruma, in the forest near Cheydinhall on the very shores of Anvil, it was the champion's job to go in, alone. They waded through the lava rivers of the Deadlands, fought the same Dremora, the same scamps, and climbed the same flesh-metal towers to grab the same sigil stones, over and over and over. They were simultaneously becoming the master of every guild, a whirlwind of pure chaotic competence. This is a hero who, on a Tuesday, would close 3 Oblivion gates, then swing by the Arcane University to finalise their research on a new spell, before spending the evening murdering an entire ship's crew to fulfill a contract for the Dark Brotherhood. This hero was busy. They were carrying the weight of the entire world, and it's precisely at this moment of overwhelming apocalyptic stress that the invitation arrived. This is the core in-game fact. A small, strange island suddenly appears in the Nibonnet Bay near Bravil. On this island is a single, bizarre stone archway, filled not with a door, but with a shimmering, shifting portal that looks like a nebula. A single, jumpy guard is posted there, warning everyone away, babbling about a strange voice and madmen. This is the strange door, the gates of madness, and it is a call from Sheogorath, the Daedric Prince of Madness. The fan community has endlessly debated the timing of this. The game allows the player to answer this call at any time. Did the champion of Cyrodiil really, in the middle of a full-scale Daedric invasion by Mehrunes Dagon, decide to just wander off and take a vacation in another Daedric prince's realm? The tragic answer seems to be yes. Perhaps the pressure was too much. Perhaps the endless grim slaughter of the Deadlands had worn them down. Perhaps this potential Shezareen, this fragment of a god's soul, felt the call of another god and simply couldn't resist it. Or perhaps they just needed a break. Whatever the reason, the champion of Cyrodiil, the saviour of the Empire, abandons their post. They step up to the shimmering portal. A voice, jovial and accented, whispers from within, inviting them in. And the hero, with the fate of the world on their shoulders, steps through. They find themselves in a small, plain room. A man sits at a desk looking bored. This is Haskell, Sheogorath's chamberlain, a being of infinite patience and a sarcasm so dry it could start a fire. He greets the hero not as a saviour, but as a tourist, and an inconvenient one at that. The prince is busy, he sighs. You'll have to wait. The hero, fresh from the battlefields of Oblivion, is forced to sit in a waiting room. This is the first test of madness. When the way is finally opened, the hero emerges into the Shivering Isles, and it is beautiful and horrifying. The realm is split perfectly in two, a physical representation of a bipolar mind. On one side is Mania, a land of vibrant, saturated colours, giant fungi, and psychedelic skies. Its capital is Bliss, and its inhabitants are the Manics, ecstatic, creative, hopelessly paranoid, and dangerously obsessive. They are artists, poets, and addicts, living in a state of perpetual joyous instability. On the other side is Dementia, a dark, twisted, rotting swamp. The trees are gnarled and weeping. The water is a black sludge. Its capital is Crucible, a city of shadows and whispers. Its inhabitants are the demented, depressed, murderous, and terrified. They are the other side of the coin, the bad trip of madness, living in a world of pure, crushing despair. The champion of Cyrodiil, a hero of order and light, has just walked into the literal heart of insanity. They travel to the palace of New Sheoth, which itself is split down the middle, and they finally meet the master of the realm, Sheogorath. He's an old man in a flamboyant suit, carrying a cane. He is witty, charming, and utterly, terrifyingly insane. He'll offer you cheese, then threaten to pluck out your eyeballs. He is delighted to see the hero. Because, as it turns out, the mad god has a problem, a very orderly problem. He explains the obscure lore tidbit, the secret at the heart of his realm. Every 1,000 years his realm is not attacked by some chaotic force. It is attacked by the opposite. It is attacked by Jiggalag, the Daedric Prince of Order. Jiggalag is a being of pure, cold, unfeeling logic. He is a god of mathematics and crystal-clear certainty. And once every era, he manifests in the Shivering Isles and leads his armies of crystalline knights of order on a grey march. They scour the Isles clean, they correct the madness, destroy everything, and restore the realm to a perfect grey, lifeless state of order. Then Jiggalag vanishes, and Sheogorath is left to rebuild his mad paradise, only for it to happen all over again. Sheogorath, the mad god, is bored of this. He's tired of the cycle. He needs a champion. He needs someone to break the cycle. And he looked across the mortal plane and saw the most capable, most chaotic, most get-things-done mortal in all of history, the Hero of Kvatch. He has summoned the champion of Cyrodiil to be his general, his champion to stop the Grey March. The hero, who has already fought one Daedric prince, is not intimidated. They are perhaps even flattered. They accept the quest. They will become a citizen of the Isles. They will choose a side, mania or dementia. They will play the games of the mad gods. They think this is just another quest. They think they are here to help Sheogorath. They have no idea that they have just walked into a divine trap. They are not here to be a champion. They are here to be a replacement. The Hero of Kvatch, ever the dutiful and terrifyingly competent one, simply got to work. After you've crawled your way through the intestines of hell to save a city, a simple request from a mad god to stop another god seems almost like a lateral move. The hero, at this point, wasn't just a person. They were an engine of quest completion, a walking, talking solution to apocalypses. And Sheogorath, in his infinite fractured wisdom, knew exactly how to use them. He explained that to stop Jiggalag, the hero would need the staff of Sheogorath, the symbol of the prince's power and his connection to the Isles. But the staff was broken, its power dormant. To rebuild it, the hero would have to become a true citizen of the Isles. They would have to become a ruler. This meant a choice. The hero had to walk the path of mania or dementia, travel to its capital, and replace its current duke. This wasn't a democratic election. Replace was a polite term. It meant investigating the Duke of Mania, Théoden, a hedonist obsessed with a secret in a bowl, and then poisoning him. Or it meant hunting down the Duchess of Dementia, Syl, a paranoid tyrant, and engaging in a complex plot of torture and assassination that involved, well, it involved a lot of screaming. It's the Shivering Isles. You don't get tenure without a little light murder. The champion of Cyrodiil, the one who had just saved the Brumaguard, the one who was the hope of the Empire, did all this with a grim, chilling efficiency. They murdered a duke, took their place on the throne, and were celebrated as a new leader of the mad. They were, step by step, shedding their mortal identity. They were learning to walk like a god of madness. This process is known as mantling. This is the core in-game fact at the heart of this tragedy. Mantling is an esoteric, dangerous process in Elder Scrolls lore. It is the idea that to become something, you must walk in its footsteps so perfectly, acting as it would act, thinking as it would think, that the universe itself can no longer tell the difference between you and the thing you are imitating. The universe abhors a vacuum. If you create a Sheogorath-shaped hole and then jump into it, the universe will say, "Good enough," and you become Sheogorath. The hero, of course, didn't know this. They just thought they were checking boxes on a quest log. They rebuilt the staff. They defended the Isles from the first waves of the Grey March, leading the armies of the Golden Saints, the Manic Daedra, and the Dark Seducers, the Demented Daedra, against the Crystalline Knights of Order. They were a brilliant general, a perfect champion, and then, just as the final battle was about to begin, they returned to the palace, staff in hand, ready to get their attaboy from Sheogorath, and the mad god was terrified. He was jittery, nervous, and then he began to change. His face contorted in agony. His jovial, accented voice dropped into a cold, monotone boom. "It is happening," he groaned. "He is coming." In a blinding flash of light, Sheogorath, the mad god, vanished. And in his place, standing on the throne, was a towering figure in crystalline armour, his face a mask of cold, perfect, unfeeling logic. This was Jiggalag. And he was not happy about the state of the palace. This is where the truth, the obscure lore tidbit, is finally revealed. Jiggalag, in his cold metallic voice, explains everything. He is Sheogorath. Or rather, Sheogorath is him. Long ago, Jiggalag was the Daedric Prince of Order, a being of such perfect, unassailable logic that he knew the future. He knew every action and reaction. His library contained the formula for every event that had ever, or would ever happen. This terrified the other Daedric princes, their spheres of chaos, of betrayal, of undeath, of the hunt. They were all meaningless in the face of Jiggalag's perfect grey certainty. He was a threat to their very nature. So they united, all of them, and they cursed him. They cursed the Prince of Order to be the thing he hated most. They transformed him into the Prince of Madness. They made him Sheogorath. This realm, the Shivering Isles, wasn't his home. It was his prison. The Grey March wasn't an invasion. It was a relapse. Once every 1,000 years, the curse would briefly lift. Jiggalag would be allowed to be himself again. And in a fit of divine, obsessive-compulsive rage, he would clean his house, wiping out the filth of madness and restoring the Isles to their original, perfect, crystalline order. But then, the curse would reassert itself, and he would become Sheogorath again, forced to rebuild his own mad paradise from scratch, with no memory of what he had done. It was an endless, agonizing, repeating cycle, until now. Jiggalag had used his logic, his last remaining shred of it, to find a loophole. The curse could not be broken by him, but it could be broken if another being, a mortal, took his place. He needed someone to take on the mantle of Sheogorath. He had been watching, waiting for a mortal soul powerful enough, competent enough, mad enough to survive the Isles. He needed the Hero of Kvatch. The entire quest was a con. The invitation, the staff, the dukedom, it was all a test, a job application, and the hero had just passed with flying colours. The Hero of Kvatch, standing there, betrayed by a god again, had only one option left. They raised the staff of Sheogorath, their staff now, and they fought the Prince of Order. And in a final cataclysmic battle, the mortal champion, this Shezarine, this fragment of a dead god, destroyed the physical form of Jiggalag. Jiggalag's spirit rose. He was free. The curse was broken. He was no longer Sheogorath. He was Jiggalag once more, free to wander the voids of Oblivion, to build his library of logic anew. He thanks the hero. "You have done it," he says. "You have broken the cycle. This realm is yours. The Shivering Isles, the title of Sheogorath, they are now yours. This madness is your burden." And then he fades away. The hero stands alone in the throne room, victorious. The Knights of Order vanish. The Grey March is over. Haskill, the long-suffering Chamberlain, approaches. He doesn't say, "Congratulations." He simply bows and says, "My lord." And in that moment, the change is complete. The Hero of Kvatch is gone. Their mind, their identity, their personality, it's all been overwritten. The universe, which abhors a vacuum, has filled the Sheogorath-shaped hole with the only available candidate, the champion of Cyrodiil, the saviour of Kvatch, the archmage, the listener, is now the mad god. This is the great tragic fan debate. When we meet Sheogorath 200 years later in Skyrim, is that our hero? He seems to remember. He mentions the Oblivion crisis, Martin Septim, a severed head, and cheese for everyone. But is this the Hero of Kvatch, their minds shattered into a million witty, psychotic pieces? Or is it new Sheogorath who has simply absorbed the hero's memories and now uses them as punchlines? That, perhaps, is the most tragic fate of all. The hero is still in there, a prisoner in their own mind, their greatest traumas reduced to a comedy routine. The hero's fate was sealed. They won. They saved the day, and their reward was to become an immortal, all-powerful, insane Daedric prince, trapped on a throne in a crazy dimension for all of eternity. And back in Tamriel, Martin Septim was still at Cloud Ruler Temple. The Blades were still waiting. The real Oblivion crisis was reaching its breaking point, and their hero, their champion, was never, ever coming back. And back in Tamriel, the Hero of Kvatch was never coming back. They were gone. The champion who was supposed to save the world had just accepted a promotion to God of Crazy People, leaving the apocalypse in the hands of a terrified priest and a few old spies. But destiny, it seems, has a backup plan. Martin Septim, the last of the Septim blood, the illegitimate son of the murdered emperor, stepped up. With the Hero of Kvatch, the designated muscle, now busy ruling a land of cheese and paranoia, Martin had to be both the brains and the brawn. As Mehrunes Dagon himself, the four-armed god of destruction, stepped through a final massive gate and began to casually annihilate the Imperial city, Martin made his last desperate move. He wasn't a warrior, he was a priest, but he had the blood of the dragon. He ran, not to fight Dagon, but to the Temple of the One. He shattered the Amulet of Kings, that necklace of dead emperors the Hero of Kvatch had been carrying, and in a final glorious screw you to the Daedric Prince, he released all the divine power within. He merged his own soul, the blood of the Dragonborn emperors, with the oversoul of Akatosh himself. In a flash of light that blinded the city, Martin Septim ceased to be. In his place, a colossal, golden, fiery dragon avatar, the literal physical form of the god of time, rose to meet Dagon. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. The god of time banished the god of destruction, a divine bouncer throwing a drunk out of the bar. Martin Septim saved the world, and in doing so, he destroyed himself, destroyed the Amulet of Kings, and ended the Septim dynasty forever. The dragonfires went out, the covenant was broken, the Third Era was over. This created a power vacuum, and the world hates a vacuum. 200 years pass. The Fourth Era is not a kind one. The Empire with no Septim on the throne is a shadow of its former self. It's a dying, bureaucratic beast. And a new power has risen, the Aldmeri Dominion. The Thalmor, elven supremacists who believe they should rule the world, fought a great war against the Empire and won. They forced the Empire to sign the White Gold Concordat, a treaty that, among other humiliating things, outlawed the worship of Talos, Tiber Septim, the man-god, the founder of the very empire they were neutering. This, of course, did not sit well with the one province that loved Talos more than any other, the Nords, the homeland, Skyrim. A civil war erupted. Ulfric Stormcloak, the Jarl of Windhelm, murdered the High King with a dragon shout, a power not seen in centuries, and declared Skyrim independent. The Empire, trying to hold itself together, moved in to crush the rebellion, and in the middle of this chaos, on a cold grey morning near the border, our next hero wakes up. Hey you, you're finally awake. This is the core in-game fact of our fifth hero's life. They begin, as is tradition, as a prisoner, but this time it's even more mundane, more pathetic. They weren't a political prisoner, they weren't a prophesied tool, they were, according to the Imperial Ledger, just some poor soul who crossed the border at the wrong time, got caught in a Stormcloak ambush, and was swept up in a mass arrest. They are on a cart, hands bound, heading for the chopping block in the village of Helgen. They are literally, in the first 5 minutes of their story, about to be executed by mistake. There is no divine dream, no ghostly guide, just a cold Imperial officer checking a list and saying, "Biat, forget the list." He goes to the block. This is the war they cannot escape. The hero is about to be decapitated, an anonymous casualty of a civil war they aren't even in. They kneel. The priest of Arche begins his rites. The headsman raises his axe, and a dragon lands on the tower. Not just a dragon, the dragon. Alduin, the World Eater, the firstborn of Akatosh, a being of myth who was supposed to be dead, has returned. The world, it seems, is ending again. In the chaos of fire, screaming and stone, the prisoner is saved. They are saved by the main antagonist who doesn't even see them. They are just an ant, and Alduin is the boot. The prisoner scrambles through the burning ruins, escapes into a cave, and emerges into the wilderness of Skyrim, a free and deeply confused person. Their first quest is simply to survive. They make it to the village of Riverwood, then to the city of Whiterun to warn the Jarl of the dragon attack. The Jarl, Belgraf the Greater, sends them on a simple go-fetch quest. Find a dragonstone tablet in a dusty old tomb. Bleakfall's Barrow, the hero does. They come back. And a dragon attacks the western watchtower. This is the real test. The hero, with a handful of guards, fights Myrmilnir, a dragon, and they win. They kill the beast, and as the dragon's flesh burns away, its very soul is ripped from its body in a torrent of light and sound, and is absorbed into the prisoner. The guards are terrified. What are you doing?" they stammer. And then, one of them, his voice hushed in awe, says the word, "Dragonborn." In the distance, a sound echoes from the tallest mountain in Tamriel. A voice, a word, a shout. Dovahkiin. The world itself is calling them. This is their mythic soul. The obscure lore tidbit is what this truly means. A Dragonborn, a Dovahkiin, is not just a person who can kill dragons. They are immortal with the soul of a dragon. This is a direct from Akatosh divine blessing, the same one given to Tiber Septim, the one that allowed him to become the god Talos. This hero, this prisoner, is not just a person, they are a demigod. They are a walking, talking piece of divinity, and their fate is not their own. They have just been activated. This is the tragedy of the Last Dragonborn. They have zero agency. The Nerevarine was sent. The Dragonborn is pulled. They are pulled by the Greybeards, the ancient monks who serve Akatosh, to High, Hrothgar to learn of their destiny. They are pulled by the Blades, the ancient dragon slayers, to fulfill their duty and kill. They are pulled by Ulfric Stormcloak to be a symbol for the rebellion. They are pulled by the Empire to be a weapon of order. And this leads to the great fan debate. Is the Last Dragonborn also a Shezarin, a reincarnation of Lorcan, just like Pelennor, just like the Hero of Kvatch was theorized to be? They have the soul of a dragon, Akatosh, but the heart of a Nord, the traditional children of Lorcan Shizar. Are they the ultimate unifier, a being with the souls of both of the great creator gods, born to finally end the war between them? This mythic divine soul makes them a tool for everyone. They are a prisoner of prophecy. They can't refuse the quest. Alduin is back, he's resurrecting his dragon army, and the Dragonborn is the only person who can permanently kill them by absorbing their souls. They cannot escape this war. It is their purpose, it is their nature. And as they would soon discover, their soul wasn't just interesting to mortals, it was interesting to other dragons. And it was especially interesting to a very old, very patient, and very tentacled Daedric prince, who had a particular fondness for special souls. The Last Dragonborn was a being of singular, terrifying purpose. They were a divine vacuum cleaner, created by Akatosh to absorb the souls of his rogue children. Their primary quest, the one impressed upon their very soul, was to find and destroy Alduin, the World Eater. This was their war, the one they couldn't escape. But this war, this grand, mythic quest, it was just the opening act for their true and far more insidious fate. To defeat Alduin, the Dragonborn needed a weapon. Not a sword, but a word. They needed to learn Dragonrend, the shout created by ancient mortals, the only sound in all of creation that a dragon fears. It doesn't harm them, it forces them to understand mortality. It imposes the concept of a lifespan on an immortal being, grounding them in the mud and the blood. But this shout was lost to time. The Greybeards didn't know it. The Blades didn't know it. To find it, the Dragonborn had to find the one thing that could look back in time, an Elder Scroll. This is where the strings began to be pulled. The hunt for an Elder Scroll, a core in-game fact, is what led the Dragonborn to a half-mad, half-brilliant scholar named Septimus Signus. He was living in a remote frozen tomb in the icefields north of Winterhold, obsessed with opening a giant ancient Dwemer lockbox. Septimus, in his madness, was the only person who knew where to find the Elder Scroll, Dragon. He sent the Dragonborn on a quest deep into the ancient glowing underground cavern of Blackreach, and as the Dragonborn fulfilled Septimus's quest, as they finally opened that Dwemer lockbox, a voice spoke, not a human voice. It was slow, ancient, and seemed to gurgle from the bottom of an ocean. It was a voice of endless, patient, and all-consuming curiosity. So, another mortal seeks my knowledge. This was Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric prince of knowledge and fate, the gardener of men, the abyssal tentacle. He revealed that Septimus Signus was, in fact, his servant. The Dwemer lockbox didn't just contain the path to the Elder Scroll, it contained the Ogma Infinium, Mora's own book of forbidden power. This is the price of knowledge. Mora, a being who is neither good nor evil, but simply wants, made a deal. He allowed the Dragonborn to use the Elder Scroll. He allowed them to look back in time, learn Dragonrend, and go on to defeat Alduin in the Nordic afterlife of Sovngarde. He let the hero have their victory, because he knew, with the perfect certainty of a god of fate, that this was just the first transaction. He had made contact, he had established a line of credit, and he knew, with his endless patient hunger, that the Dragonborn would be back. The Dragonborn defeated Alduin. The world was saved. They were a hero, celebrated in every mead hall. They could have retired, bought the house in solitude, and spent the rest of their days adopting orphans and enchanting iron daggers. But then, the cultists came. They appeared in Riverwood, or Whiterun, their faces hidden by grotesque masks. They called the Dragonborn a fake, a false prophet. They served, they hissed, the true Dragonborn, Miraak. And then they tried to kill the hero. This is the beginning of the true inevitable tragedy. The Dragonborn, their pride pricked, their power challenged, does what they do best. They investigate. This leads them to a ship in Windhelm, which takes them to the island of Solstheim, the very same island, we must remember, that the Nerevarine had visited centuries before. On Solstheim, the Dragonborn finds a world gripped by a strange, creeping madness. The people are zombie-like, chanting and building strange, organic-looking shrines. This leads the hero to a black book. This is the obscure lore tidbit. The black books are not just books, they are artifacts of Hermaeus Mora, and reading one physically transports the reader's mind and soul to Mora's own realm of Oblivion, Apocrypha. The Dragonborn opens the book, their body slumps to the ground, and their soul is ripped into a dimension of pure, toxic knowledge. Apocrypha. It is not a hell of fire or a paradise of madness. It is a library. An endless, rotting, green-skied library. The oceans are made of ink. The sky is a vortex of swirling pages. The air is thick with whispers, and the people are seekers. Floating, tentacled horrors that guard the stacks, and lurkers, giant fish-like brutes that rise from the acidic sea. And Hermaeus Mora is there, in his true form, a colossal, undulating mass of tentacles, eyeballs, and a single, vast, knowing mind. He is delighted to see the Dragonborn. He greets them like an old colleague. He explains the situation. Miraak was the first Dragonborn, a dragon priest back during the original Dragon War. But Miraak, in his hunger for power, found Mora. He became Mora's champion, and Mora taught him the ultimate knowledge, a shout to bend the will of dragons. But Miraak grew arrogant and turned on his masters. He was defeated, and as his last act he retreated into Apocrypha, where he has been sulking, as Mora puts it, for 4,000 years. Now Miraak is using Mora's own power to try and escape back to Tamriel, and Hermaeus Mora, the ultimate collector, wants a new toy. This is the great fan debate. Did Mora orchestrate this entire conflict? Of course he did. He is the Prince of Fate. He saw the last Dragonborn coming. He saw his old servant Miraak getting uppity. And he engineered this entire scenario as a grand cosmic trade-in. He dangled Miraak in front of the Dragonborn, knowing the Dragonborn's very nature, their soul-absorbing, shout-learning, power-hungry nature, would force them to act. The Dragonborn's entire quest, their very being, is about acquiring knowledge and power. And all knowledge, in the end, flows back to Mora. They are the perfect servant. Mora forces the Dragonborn into a new service. To defeat Miraak, the Dragonborn must learn the same forbidden knowledge. They must serve Hermaeus Mora. They must become his new champion, his new agent. The price is simple. They must hunt down the secrets of the Skaal, a tribe of Nords on Solstheim, and deliver their ancient, protected knowledge to Mora, effectively dooming their shaman. The Dragonborn, trapped, does it. They trade a people's soul for the power to win. They have become a true agent of the tentacle god. Their victories, past and future, are not their own. They are all inevitably gifts from their new, patient and eternal master. The price of knowledge was everything. The deal was struck. The price, the very soul of the Skaal's shaman, was paid. Hermaeus Mora, the abyssal tentacle, the divine loan shark, had his payment. And in return, the last Dragonborn received the final word of power, the key to defeating Miraak. They were now armed with the same forbidden knowledge as their rival, the same shout that could bend the will of a dragon. They were, in every meaningful way, Miraak's equal, his replacement. The final confrontation was a battle of mythic proportions. The Dragonborn, having tamed a dragon with their new, dark power, rode it across the ink-black, acidic oceans of Apocrypha. They flew through the skies of swirling pages, past the colossal, rotting towers, to the very apex of Mora's realm. There, at the summit, Miraak waited. It was a battle of Dragonborn. Two souls of the dragon, two demigods, tearing reality apart with their shouts. They were not just fighting each other, they were fighting in the very heart of their master's domain, a cage match orchestrated by the god of fate himself. The Last Dragonborn was inevitably victorious. They were younger, stronger, and, as the protagonist of the story, blessed with the divine right of reloading a save, they struck Miraak down. The first Dragonborn, the ancient dragon priest, the servant of 4 millennia, was beaten. But the last Dragonborn was not granted the killing blow. As Miraak, beaten and humbled, kneeled in the Black Ichor, Hermaeus Mora himself manifested. This is the core in-game fact of the Dragonborn's fate. The sky ocean of Apocrypha congealed into a single, vast, undulating mass of tentacles, claws, and all-seeing eyes. The Gardener of Men had come to do some weeding. Miraak, the ancient gurgling voice boomed, "Your rebellion is over. You have served me long, but you have become defiant. It is time for a new champion." And with a movement as casual as a man swatting a fly, Mora impaled his servant of 4,000 years with a single, sharpened tentacle. He lifted Miraak's dying body into the air. "He is beaten," Mora told the Dragonborn. "Now, absorb his soul. It is your right, as my new champion." Miraak's last words were a curse. "May he, Mora, kill you, as he has killed me." And then his soul, a torrent of ancient knowledge and dragon power, was ripped from his body and poured into the Last Dragonborn. It was a gift, a signing bonus, a final binding transfer of power. Miraak was gone. The Dragonborn stood alone, the most powerful being in the realm facing their new master. And Mora was pleased. "You are my champion," he declared. "Miraak's power is yours, his knowledge, his place. You can leave this realm, for now, but know this. Apocrypha is your home. Its knowledge is your duty. Read the books, learn, serve. Your time here is indefinite." This is the great, terrifying fan theory that defines the Dragonborn's eternal fate. The game, of course, lets you leave. You can fast travel back to Solstheim, go back to Skyrim, and continue your life. You can finish the Civil War, become the Archmage, kill vampires. You can live a full, heroic life. But what happens when you die? The Nerevarine was cursed with immortality. The Hero of Kvatch was cursed with divinity. The Last Dragonborn is immortal. They will, one day, grow old. They will, one day, die. A hero's death in battle, or a quiet death in their bed in Breezehome. And when a mortal soul dies, it goes to its designated afterlife. A loyal Nord goes to Sovngarde to drink mead in the Hall of Valor. A werewolf's soul is claimed by Hircine to run forever in the Great Hunting Grounds. The listener of the Dark Brotherhood is claimed by Sithis, vanishing into the void. A vampire soul is pulled, screaming, into the bleak, soul-gem-filled hell of Molagbal's Cold Harbour. Every soul has a destination, and the Dragonborn soul is claimed. This is the tragedy. Their eternal fate as Mora's prisoner is not about being physically locked in Apocrypha during their mortal life. Mora is far too clever for that. Why chain up a useful tool? No, he lets his champion run free in the mortal world to gather more knowledge, to find more artifacts, to level up, all of which, in the end, belongs to him. The Dragonborn's damnation is their afterlife. When their mortal body finally fails, their soul will not fly to Sovngarde. They already went to Sovngarde, remember, to fight Alduin. But they were a visitor, a tourist. They didn't stay. Their soul has a lien on it, a prior claim, signed in ink and blood and the secrets of the Skaal. The moment they die, their soul will be pulled irresistibly back to that green rotting library, back to Apocrypha, forever. This is the cold, intellectual damnation. They will not be tortured. They will not be flayed. They will simply be filed. They will spend the rest of eternity as Mora's personal possession. Perhaps, as some fans theorize, they will become a seeker, one of those floating tentacled ghosts that drift through the stacks, guarding forbidden knowledge. Or perhaps they will be Mora's personal librarian, an eternal servant, cataloguing the endless screaming truths of the cosmos. We even have obscure lore tidbits that support this. We have seen other souls bound by oaths. In Skyrim itself, the spirit of the dragon priest Varlock the Jailer is still bound to his tomb, forced by an ancient oath to watch over Mirak's prison. Duty and oaths can chain a soul, even one as powerful as a Dragonborn's. The Dragonborn's very nature is what trapped them. They are a being of endless want. They want shouts, they want power, they want knowledge, and Mora's realm is an all-you-can-eat buffet of exactly that. Apocrypha isn't a prison, it's a perfectly designed, bespoke trap. The Hero of Kvatch lost their mind, the Nerevarine lost their world, the Dragonborn, in their quest for knowledge, lost their eternity. They are a book that has been read and is now being placed back on the shelf, in its proper place, in its owner's library, forever. It is a grim, cold and quiet fate, a damnation of the soul. But as bleak as this is, it is a fate that assumes the hero has a soul to claim. Our next, and perhaps most unique hero, has a very different problem. Their tragedy is not about where their soul will go, it is about the horrifying, empty fact that it is already gone. The Last Dragonborn's fate was a cold, intellectual damnation, a promise of eternal servitude in an endless, rotting library. It was the price for their insatiable hunger for knowledge and power. But as tragic as it is to lose one's afterlife, it pales in comparison to the unique, existential horror of our next hero. A hero who begins their story not as a prisoner, not as a chosen one, but as a corpse. A hero who is not defined by the soul they have, but by the gaping, black and bottomless absence where their soul is supposed to be. We go back in time, far back, to the Second Era, year 582, the Interregnum. The Septim dynasty doesn't exist. The empire has collapsed. Tamriel is a fractured, lawless continent, ripped apart by the alliance war between three great factions, all vying for the empty ruby throne. It is a time of chaos, desperation, and opportunity. For in this vacuum of power, a new, dark force has risen. Manimarco, the king of worms, the most powerful necromancer in history, has struck a bargain. His 5 companions, in a foolish attempt to perform a ritual to make their leader, Varan Aquilarios, a dragonborn emperor, were tricked. Manimarco corrupted the ritual. He wasn't trying to light the dragon fires, he was trying to blow out the sun. He struck a deal with the Daedric prince of domination, enslavement, and the unimaginable torments of the soul, Molag Bal. This bargain sparked the Planameld. This wasn't a simple invasion like Dagon's, this was a merger. Molag Bal's plan was to literally pull the entire continent of Tamriel into his own realm of Oblivion Cold Harbour, anchoring it with dark anchors, great soul-stealing chains. He would fuse the 2 dimensions, creating a single vast hellscape under his eternal rule. And to fuel this, he needed one thing: souls, billions of them. This is where our hero enters. They are a face in the crowd, one of thousands, perhaps millions, captured by Manimarco's worm cult. They are brought to a dark, sacrificial altar, and, in a cold, impersonal, and deeply anticlimactic ritual, their throat is cut. They are a sacrifice. Their soul, in a flash of screaming dark energy, is ripped from their body and pulled across the void, straight into Cold Harbour. The hero is dead. Their quest begins after their story is ended. This is the core in-game fact. They awaken, not in Tamriel, not in a prison cell, but in the heart of darkness itself, Cold Harbour. It is a twisted, grotesque mockery of Niern. The sky is a vortex of black clouds lit by cold blue fire. The landscape is a jagged mass of spikes, black rock and chains. The very air is filled with the sound of wailing. The hero wakes up in a cell wearing rags in this nightmare realm. They are immediately told the truth by a fellow prisoner, Lyris Titanborn. You're dead. We're all dead. This is Cold Harbour. But they are. Walking. They are thinking. How? This is the unique, existential horror. This is the obscure lore, tidbit. They are a vestige, a soul shriven. When Molag Bal steals a soul, he doesn't just let the body die. That's a waste. In his realm, he tortures the true soul, breaking it down, purifying it into a soul gem-like essence. But the body, he reanimates. He replaces the missing stolen soul with a Daedric vestige, a small piece of the chaotic creature of Oblivion itself, a spark of azure plasm. This thing, this vestige, is a copy, a mockery. It has the original person's memories, their skills, their personality. But it is a hollow vessel. It is a puppet animated by a Daedric string. The hero, the player, the one who escapes Cold Harbour, is not the original person. They are a clone, an echo, a walking, talking emptiness. The real them, the soul that once inhabited that body, is still in Cold Harbour, still being tortured, still screaming. This is the hero's entire desperate motivation. They are guided by the blind, spectral prophet, who is actually the disgraced soul-stolen Emperor Varen Aquilarios, the man who caused all this, to escape Cold Harbour and return to Tamriel. They fight their way out, and in a flash of magic they are returned to the mortal world. They are back, but they are not whole. They are still a vestige, a soulless one. This is the great fan debate. Who is the vestige? Are they a person? Do they have free will? Are there heroic acts? And they perform many, fighting across all of Tamriel, stopping the plane meld, engaging in the Alliance War, genuine acts of altruism? Or are they just a hollow container, a thing that is uniquely suited to fighting Molag Bal? This soulless state is in fact their greatest power. They are a walking paradox. They are a being of oblivion in Nirn. They are an anchor. Because they are already dead and soulless, they cannot be re-sacrificed. They can absorb sky shards. They can resist the mind-warping effects of the dark anchors. They are the perfect, custom-built weapon to fight Molag Bal, precisely because Molag Bal created them. Their tragedy is one of profound philosophical horror. Every other hero on our list had something to lose. The champion was forgotten. The agent was erased. The Nerevarine lost his mortality. The Hero of Kvatch lost his mind. The Dragonborn lost his afterlife. The vestige starts with nothing. They are a zero, an echo. Their entire continent-spanning quest, their hundreds of hours of adventure, is not a quest for glory or prophecy or knowledge. It is a desperate, primal and singularly human quest to become a person again, to find their own stolen soul and shove it back inside their chest, to finally be whole. But this unique, hollow, Daedric-powered existence, it has one final, terrible, and endlessly repeating consequence. What happens when a being who is animated by a Daedric vestige, a creature who is already of oblivion, dies in the mortal world? They don't stay dead. They are not mortal. They are a mockery of life. And for this hero, death is not an end. It is not a tragedy. It is an inconvenience. And what happens when this hollow Daedric-powered echo dies? What is the penalty for failure? This is the core in-game fact of the vestige's entire existence, the mechanic that defines their tragedy. When the vestige is struck down by a Daggerfall soldier's blade, a giant's club, or a misjudged leap from a cliff, they do not die. There is no soul to release. There is no afterlife to claim them. Instead, they respawn. Imagine the feeling, a flash of pain, then darkness. But not the peaceful, cold darkness of an end. It is a violent metaphysical pulling. The azure plasm that animates them, that Daedric spark, is bound to the fabric of Nirn, anchored by the ancient magical way shrines. Their body dissolves into blue light. Their consciousness is yanked, unwillingly, across the landscape, and they are reformed, particle by particle, at the nearest stone circle. They stumble to their feet, whole again, with a gasp. Their gear is intact, their wounds are gone. The only cost is a moment of disorientation, and perhaps a small repair bill for their armour. This is the endless, empty walk. This is their final, unending tragedy. Their inability to truly die. The first time it must have been a miracle. The 10th time, a curiosity. The 1000th time, it is a unique and inescapable hell. The vestige is robbed of the most fundamental aspect of the mortal experience, consequence. This is the great fan debate that rages around the vestige. Are they, in any meaningful sense, a hero? How can you be brave when you cannot die? How can you sacrifice when you have nothing, not even your own oblivion to risk? They fight alongside companions who do have souls. Lyris Titanborn, Sai Sahan, Abnor Tharn. These are mortals. When they draw their swords, they are risking everything. Their one precious, irreplaceable life. If they fall, they go to Sovngarde, or the far shores, or their own version of an afterlife. They are gone. The Vestige is on a timeout. Their death is an inconvenience, a slightly frustrating jog back to the battlefield. This isolates them from their own comrades more completely than any curse. They are a general who cannot be killed, leading an army that can be. They are a friend who cannot understand the fundamental fear of loss, because they can never be lost. They are a walking, talking cheat code in a world where everyone else is playing on hardcore mode. Their entire grand quest, their journey across Tamriel, is all in service of fixing this. They are not trying to gain a throne or a godhood. They are just trying to get their real soul back. And they succeed. In the final climactic confrontation, the Vestige and their companions storm the heart of Cold Harbour. They fight their way through the armies of Molag Bal, and in a final act the prophet Varan Aquilarios sacrifices his own essence. The Vestige is infused with the divine light of Meridia, another Daedric prince, but one who really hates, Molag Bal and the power of Akatosh. They become a momentary god, a being of light. They confront Molag Bal, the prince of domination, in his own throne room, and they win. They banish the god, stop the Planemeld, and save Tamriel. As a reward for this impossible victory, Meridia does the one thing the Vestige has always wanted. She finds their original soul, the true them, the one that was stolen on that altar, and she gives it back. The Vestige is finally, truly, whole. They are a mortal person once more. The curse is broken, the tragedy is over. Except it isn't. This is the obscure lore tidbit, the final, cruelest twist. The lore of the Elder Scrolls Online makes it clear, the game continues after this. The Vestige, now with their mortal soul restored, continues their adventures. They go on to fight other Daedric princes, to explore new lands, to delve into other plots, and, when they die in these new adventures, they still respawn at the Wayshrine. Their victory did not replace the Daedric spark. It did not cure their condition. It just added their soul to it. They are a hybrid. They are a mortal, human soul, now permanently fused, trapped inside an immortal, Daedric, respawning body. They have, in effect, doomed their own soul to the same, endless repeating cycle. This is their fate. They are the hero who won. They saved the world, got their soul back, and were rewarded with true immortality. Not the agelessness of the Nerevarine, who could still be killed. Not the godhood of the Hero of Kvatch, who at least got to be in charge. No, the Vestige is simply stuck. They are doomed to the endless empty walk. They are the eternal adventurer. They will never die. They will never find the peace of an afterlife. They will never see Sovngarde or any other final rest. They are cursed to walk Tamriel in a cycle of life, death, and respawn forever. They are, in all likelihood, still walking when the Last Dragonborn is born 200 years later. They are that anonymous, unnervingly skilled adventurer you pass on the road, the one who seems to know every cave, every ruin, and has a 1,000-yard stare that speaks of 1,000 respawns. They are the hero who can never stop, the story that can never end. A tragic immortal echo forever wandering the world they saved, but can now never, ever leave. And so our long chronicle of heroic and often quite tragic fates comes to a quiet close. We have journeyed from the forgotten champion, rewarded with obscurity, to the agent, erased by time itself. We have followed the Nerevarine into their immortal lonely exile, and watched the Hero of Kvatch take a promotion that cost them their very mind. We have seen the Last Dragonborn, their soul chained to a library of tentacles, and finally, we have walked with the Vestige, the echo who can never ever find the peace of a final end. Their victories were never clean. Their rewards were so often just a heavier and lonelier burden. But their stories are now just that, stories. And like all good stories, they are here to help us understand and then to help us rest. The fires of Oblivion are doused, the dragons are slumbering once more, and the tentacled abyssal whispers from Apocrypha are fading now, becoming just a soft, distant hum, as quiet as the fan in your room. There are no more quests tonight. No more sacrifices to be made. There is only the safety of your own bed and the quiet, heavy comfort of the darkness. Let their tragic fates be a reminder that your own rest is a true reward, a genuine peace. So let the last of the tension fade from your shoulders. Let your thoughts drift, becoming as soft and indistinct as the mists of Cold Harbour. It is all over. It is all quiet.